Oh, how's it going? Welcome to episode 9 of Hyped for Hoops. So, unfortunately, it's only just 3 of this week, but we'll manage. So, my first question is: should the NBA continue with the play-in tournament? I do know it's been decided that it will happen for the foreseeable future, but Dacian and Stefan, what do you guys think and feel about the play-in tournament?
I think I mean, it's really easy to get hyped for a very small tournament to see if your team gets in or doesn't get into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be really nice to see more teams in this tournament. And it would also be nice for the pocketbooks of the owners. So, they'd be up for it. Um, yeah, it's, you know, as long as they don't decide the actual weight of which team gets which position in terms of like draft lottery picking, I'm okay with expanding it to a few more teams. If that would be impacted, just leave it at four. It's fun, right? It's a one game, anything can happen, anyone can win theoretically. Whatever, whichever team goes on goes on. I wouldn't expand it to like the top, six teams, but I would say, hey, if we had eight teams vying for the last two spots, like wild cards and the NFL type stuff, you could do it. I would be in favor of it. It would be entertaining. It'd be sort of like a March Madness type feel tournament, except you'd have like two winners, I guess. But then
Uh,
the other interesting thing you could do with it is actually have 16 teams, East and West, and the top four in like a full bracket tournament go into the next round, and then that'll completely throw everything in the loop.
I find it a little troubling that just one game is going to decide. Like it doesn't even matter that one game. It could make or break a season in
Mm-hmm.
terms of let's say a team is a number 7 seed or a number 8 seed, and then the difference between the number 8, 9, 10 is like a 10 game winning difference, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so a team that has lost 10 more games or has won 10 less games is
Mm-hmm.
going to end up having a chance to play, and then that one game could make or break pretty much. Like, you know what I mean? It's like 10 games, 10 wins is going to be comparable to one win
Mm-hmm.
in that game there, the playing. So I find that a little troubling. Like, the whole season, the teams go through injuries and all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things, and then just to rely on that one game to say, all right, you're the best 8 teams is, or for the last 2 teams at least, I find that a little troubling. It doesn't sit well with me. I would definitely, I don't like it, but I do see why owners want to do this, and of course, it's all has to do with money. Um, but in terms of like competition, it's the playoffs, man. Like, you're gonna play 7 games to see which teams are gonna advance every round. But to say the last 4 teams, or 7, 8, 9, 10, are gonna have a play-in to try to get that one position, and the difference could be really staggering. And then just to say that one game is gonna get you in now to the playoffs is, I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me in terms of like competition.
But the way it's done, right? Like the 7-8 teams do technically have an advantage, um, in that they have to win one of two games to get in, whereas the other team, the 9-10 team, has to win both, right? So it's the degree of difficulty is way higher on the lower seeds.
Yeah, again, it's just 1 or 2 wins, right? That's going to be the difference of getting in or out. And if let's say if I'm a number 7 team, and I have 45 wins, and the number 8 team or the number 9 or 10 team has um, 35 wins, 30 wins, and then they end up getting into the playoffs, like 10 game winning difference. That's huge, man. And to say, all right, just win 2 games and then you're in the playoffs, it's wrong, man. It defeats the whole season. Like you could like sit out 10 games and lose those 10 games, and then at the end, have the number 10 team just win two games and just get in, right? Like you could rest your star players for 10 games pretty much. It's just like competition wise, I think the season is too important to have it come down to 1 or 2 games at the end of the season where the last 4 try to get in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. You have both great points on both sides of it. But I think I tend to agree with Jay in the sense of I hate that a season comes down to 1 or 2 games for a team, especially like you said, if the difference between the 7th seed and the 10th seed is staggering. It's just like why should you get a chance to be in the playoffs? Like let's put it this way, the Raptors up until I think the like last month were in the playoff contention where I recall something along that line, and they've not been playing well, right? They've been a pretty bad team the latter half. Like they kind of picked it up in the middle, or sorry, the second quarter, I guess, of the season. But then after the All-Star break, they couldn't really get the things rolling again. But they were in the conversation for the playoffs, and that's kind of just ridiculous when teams aren't playing well and then they're able to make it in. So just keep in mind that with this current format, with the play-in, essentially you just can't be one of the bottom 5 teams in each conference. So in the East, to not be in the bottom 5, you can still have a pretty bad record and squeak in at that 10 spot. I think this sets up those kind of like Cinderella stories where hey, one of those play-in teams maybe can pull off an upset. Not likely, obviously, because you're gonna have to play that number 1 seed. But I guess sports, they always like that story in sports, I think.
But if you're going to make that kind of a tournament where make or break 1 or 2 games, then make it for the whole tournament, not just like the bottom 4, right? It should be from number 1 to number 8, right there. That's how it should be, right? Like you can't reward teams for sitting out their stars and then just playing them right at the end to get into the play-in, or play when it counts. Like you play the season for a reason, so you can get a good position in the playoffs, so you have home court advantage, so you can play in front of your fans, so you have a top seed playing a worse team. But yeah, like what does the season count if you really have it coming down to 1 or 2 games at the end?
You know, what would be kind of interesting as well, kind of like a mixture of the two. And you take all 30 teams. I mean, you might have to expand it to 32 for the numbers to actually work out properly. And like make the season 72 games, then make a playoff tournament where every single team plays every other, or, like 1 through 16 on each side, and then just do brackets like March Madness style. And then after that, just have the regular playoffs as well. It would
like
be
just like a tournament for like another award kind of thing. You're saying?
Yeah. So like, how the English Football Federation has the cup and the actual championship for winning the Premier. So like have it that kind of structure where you're vying for 2 different trophies every year. And it gets the best of both worlds, right? You get the whole tournament thing where anybody could win any single night. You could have 16 beat 1. It's possible. It's unlikely. It's possible. But, you have all that drama going there, and then you have like the actual playoffs 1 through 8. That would be entertaining. And plus, like, let's be honest, the regular season doesn't matter. If you're a good team, the regular season doesn't matter. So who cares? Lose 10 games in the regular season for a playoff atmosphere thing. I think that'd be worth it.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. Oh, one thing I just did think about, in terms of if you're 7th or 8th seed, and for some reason you just have an injury during those playing games, like a major injury. I mean, it almost happened with the Lakers, right, with LeBron James, and like, how is that kind of fair to define your season when sorry, one of my best players is sick or hurt or whatever.
Yeah, really, but that's true even in a 7-game series, right?
But
like if LeBron's injured for all 7 games, well, that's still not fair. So
I mean, at least they had to play 7 games.
Well, the likelihood of someone being injured for like 2 weeks straight is like, if that's the case, then your team is going to be fucked, right? But if if it for 1 or 2 games, the likelihood of you missing players and is there's a bigger likelihood of you being impacted, far greater in terms of like results, right?
And it's basketball, right? Any one game can happen. Sometimes weird things happen for one game. So, all right. So my next topic or in question is: do you think the NBA awards should be given out after the entire season, including the playoffs, is over? So for me personally, I think that would be really great, or just not great, but rather in terms of the MVP, that really shows who the MVP is when the games matter. And being the regular season MVP is pretty sweet, but we've seen a lot of times the regular season MVP not show up in the playoffs. So, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I would definitely disagree with this. Like, I would never have. I don't think it makes sense because there are teams that don't get into the playoffs,
True.
and those teams might have the MVP right there, right? Very high. Not a high likelihood of that happening.
No, I don't think so.
Most of the time, like the MVP is usually on a really competitive team that makes it to the playoffs.
Yes.
But how can you judge the MVP for the season and consider also the playoffs when some teams are going to play 7 games in the playoffs, some teams are going to play 4 games. Some players are not going to play at all, or some players might even play like 14 or 16 playoffs games or 20 games or whatever it may be. So the number of games it's not like a season where you have 82 games and you can judge the season based on how many games that player has played and average out whatever, and you have a better sense of who really is the MVP here in the season compared to season and playoff, or just judging just based on the playoffs.
I'm going to agree with Jay here, but for a similar reason. But the MVP isn't the easy one to look at. If you want to look at Rookie of the Year, chances are your Rookie of the Year isn't going to be playing for a team that's even going to make the playoffs. So that's going to very likely affect their chances of winning Rookie of the Year if you see some other rookie just lighting it up in the playoffs. Is that fair? I don't know, because there is no Rookie of the Year for playoffs, right? There's only a playoff MVP. And the other thing, if you move it to after the playoffs, well, there is no playoff MVP, right? You don't get to market a second trophy.
Well, it's the finals MVP.
The finals MVP, sorry,
that's not, I guess.
But that's important, right? Like it's important for the player who wins it. And that's one extra trophy you can't really have, I think.
Yeah, I just think my biggest beef is just the fact that, like I said, people have won the MVPs before and they're just like non-factors in the playoffs. And I mean, it's a whole different monster, I guess, right? Playoff basketball is a lot slower. Defenses lock in. You have 7 games or up to 7 games to develop a defensive strategy, learn the play style of the other team and whatnot. So it's really difficult to play your game exactly to the standard that which you played during the regular season. But I don't know. I just thought it was just trying to throw a different spin on that topic. So our last topic, go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say like one last thing. The playoffs, like you said, it's so different, right? Like teams are their roster or the playing time just gets cut down to like 8 players that are going to play, 9 players that are going to play, right? Whereas this season you have such a big rotation of players getting playing time. So the MVP in the playoffs, like that your star player is going to be on pretty much like the whole game. Maybe takes a minute or 2 rest for every quarter. So it's very different. So when we judge like MVP, and again you said it, like teams really lock in on MVP players in the playoffs. Like they give like look at Giannis what happened 2 years ago. Like he totally got shut down when Raptors played against him. He just got shut down, and teams just find ways to lock into these players, these MVP players. So it takes away their game and takes away their skills too. So to just purely judge like the season and the playoffs on an MVP, I don't know. I don't think it would work very well.
Mhm. And our last topic today is talking about sports during the pandemic. So, obviously, all major sports have found a way to continue, but with that, there have been a lot of disruptions. I know something like the Vancouver Canucks had some massive outbreak, which pretty much like shut down the whole team. Here in Toronto, the Raptors essentially lost multiple players throughout the whole season, and I know that was true in the NBA as well. So, what are your thoughts on sports during the pandemic? Do you think they should have been put on hold? Do you think that the way they're doing it is a good system? What do you think?
No, I don't. I wished I wish the leagues they all shut down, and they did early on,
Mm-hmm.
right? When a lot of it was unknown, but obviously money is such a drive in doing anything nowadays, and especially with sports. Like there's people's job on the line here,
Yes.
and big money with corporations, millions and billions of dollars. So it's it's sad to see that there is so much greed, and they're willing to risk people's lives and because it's not just the players, right? It's like trying to get this pandemic to stop and stop the
Yes.
bleeding,
Mm.
right? It's trying to control it and stop the bleeding, but yeah, it's corporations just decided against that and started opening up again, and it's too bad. I wish it would have there would have been more. They would have looked at it a little differently. Um, and they should have shut down, in my opinion. Like Tokyo Olympics, I don't think it should be a go.
Mm.
Like, what's the point of playing or competing in these sports if people can't even go and watch in person?
Mm.
Sure, you can watch it on TV, but it's just I don't know. It sends the wrong message, and right now people should be really taking care of themselves
Mm.
and trying to stop this pandemic from spreading and hurting other people and families. And sure, a lot of businesses have lost money. Um, so $1 billion sports industry with a whole lot of rich people,
Mm.
I'm sure they can take a hit.
See, I don't know if it's necessarily them taking a hit. It's partial. Like I think partially the reason they would want to go on is that if people are stuck at home, you got to have something to do, like
Mm.
something to
Mm.
watch. And the way they're doing it, is it perfect? No, but it's okay. It's like they've taken all the measures they could realistically.
Mm.
So I'm okay with them going on, and like having the major sports happen because it's a distraction. It's something for us to watch. It's something for us to talk about. It's something for us to whatever during once in a generation pandemic. That's we're probably never going to see this again. So hey, it's something to do, right? Jay brought up the Olympics, and yeah, I'm with him. That one shouldn't happen until you can get people in there, because the money at that level is like you have to pay the Olympic Committee so much money in order to have the Olympics,
Mm.
and it doesn't make sense if you can't have fans going to all the things you've built. Because you built those with the assumption that people are going to visit your country and they're going to put money into your country. And I don't know about Japan's finances,
Mm.
but that's probably isn't the haircut they wanted when they were, bidding on the Olympics.
Mm.
They wanted to bring money into their economy. They wanted people to go to hotels. They wanted all this stuff to happen, but that's obviously not going to happen if they have it this year. If they had it next year, like if they kept postponing it until it was safe to have fans,
Mm.
that would be a different story, right? But like you can do basketball, like professional league basketball, professional league soccer. You can do that without fans. It's fine.
Yeah, definitely. I see Stefan's point in the sense of I saw them bringing back sports. Obviously, there was that financial benefit for the owners, the league, and whatnot. But I saw it as kind of like a way to show that the world is kind of getting back to normal, or at least we could do something. I know, like obviously, when the pandemic first hit, stuff shut down. But when you start bringing it back, it kind of just brings back some one entertainment, but some normalcy to our lives. It's like, well, at least we still got sports. Like that one thing that we kind of was consistent during the pandemic was, oh, okay, at least we can still watch sports if we need to, and it's kind of there. But it just, but I agree with Jay at the same time. It kind of sends this message too that maybe I'm not saying like everybody, but maybe some people are just like watching and they'll be, oh, maybe the pandemic's not really that big of a deal because sports are going on. But yeah, just on the topic of the Tokyo Olympics, I know you both expressed your opinion on it, but how would you? I just want you to just hypothetically think about being an athlete in this situation where, obviously, with the Olympics and certainly for certain sports, very specific sports that only really get featured in the Olympics, you're training your 4 years for that moment, and it's already been postponed 1 year, so that kind of threw a wrench into a lot of people's training plans and whatnot. But if you're an athlete and Tokyo was, let's obviously, yeah, there's going to be another Olympics in the future, but maybe this is your last one in the sense of your age is just you don't realistically see yourself going past this Olympics. So do you, as an athlete, push forward and just say, hey, let's just do what we can, or do we just kind of take a step back and say, you know what, I gotta sacrifice this because it's for the greater good, kind of thing?
Well, sir, for some of these athletes that compete in the Olympics, this is their sole means of
Yes.
trying to provide for themselves or their families. So I definitely see that they would want to go, and so it's like it's a really tough position for them to make for them to make a decision on this because like on one side is they have to provide, right, they have
Of
to
course.
earn some kind of living.
Mhm.
But it's also it shows like the absolutely unfairness or like the like you can see the politics at play here,
Okay.
or at, at least the financial greed by like corporations, the IOC and everything,
Mhm.
because really they're not the ones that are risking their lives trying to um, go in and compete and do all this stuff,
Mhm.
right? So I see it as like there are these athletes that are they're laborers and they have to make the decision either to go in and play or not to play and end up losing a lot of money. But compared to what the corporations will be losing, it's like it's pennies, right? Compared to what the corporations would be gaining if the Tokyo Olympics will be taking place. So I can't even remember what your question was.
I just, as an athlete, what,
Yeah,
and you're in that position, would you be like, let's do this, or
yeah,
would you?
it's a really tough decision, right? Because
Mhm.
this happens every 4 years,
Yes.
and you in your lifetime you might only do one or you might do two Olympics,
Exactly.
three at most or four at most, right?
Mhm.
Like that's a big decision to make, and I certainly wouldn't want to be in that position, but these athletes need to make a living.
Mhm.
They pretty much train like 4 years to get down to
Yes.
this position in the be in
Exactly.
this, and to not have it happen is a huge loss for them more than it is for like the corporations. The corporations will lose billions, and it,
Uh, Stefan, was Jay a bit choppy right there?
Yeah.
Sorry, just
yeah, I thought
just re-say your thing about the corporations. I'll just cut it in.
I can't even remember what I said. But, yeah, so the athletes are the ones that are going to be at loss because they're earning a living wage for themselves. That's their means to live, and earn a living. But in terms of like the corporations losing money, the athletes will be compared to what the corporations are losing. The athletes are losing no, the corporations will be losing billions, but at the end of the day, they're still laughing because
They'll be
they're
fine.
still coming out rich, right? Like the hit that they're taking, they're still going to be rich no matter what. For them, it's just greed, but for the athletes, it's actually trying to earn a living here.
Yeah, honestly, if I was an athlete, I would go.
Okay.
And it's like if you have the opportunity to go to an Olympics, like a regular Olympics, that'd be something cool and something you can talk about for the rest of your lives. Hey, I was there, I did it, that was cool. This, nobody else is going to experience an Olympic like this. You are even more unique than anyone going to a regular Olympics, right? So, take the opportunity, see what happens. Honestly, it'll probably be safer than anything else. Like there's people going to work in factories, there's people going to work in warehouses. It probably won't be that unsafe. In fact, it'll probably be as safe as most people who go who are working from home these days, right? So I don't know. I can't really justify them not going if they've decided that the Olympics need to take place now. Especially since, like you said, hey, this is my last chance of going, or this is
likely
probably my last chance of going. So it's like, why wouldn't you?
But it's not just competing in the actual sport, right? There's everything else that you have to do too, right? You have to actually travel from your country down to this other country. You have to live within a confined space over there. There might be media, whatever. Like it's still it's very different from you doing your everyday job like an essential worker does, right? Because you're actually putting yourself at risk, traveling, being together as a team or separate as or competing. That's a small risk, yes, but you still need to be traveling, right? And some of these competitions might not be like at one location. It might be going from one country and then to another city, or within like different areas of the city.
I'm pretty sure they're all within the Tokyo area. So that part wouldn't be that bad.
You
The
still have
travel
to
within.
travel though, right? You still have to travel.
Sure, but if they're going through the effort of doing all this, they're probably going through the effort of make sure everyone's vaccinated and make sure all the other stuff, right? So, they're probably quarantining in Canada before they fly over. They're going to quarantine in Japan before they're allowed in the country. They're going to do all this other stuff. So, like, honestly, it's as safe as it could be, everything considering, right? Like, I don't see this being a massive, I don't know, let's say biker rally in Sturgis that ends up with 100,000 people infected. I don't see this. Like, this seems like it'd be way better organized than something like that, right?
So would you say that the cases would be lower than in everyday society, or would it be like the same or higher?
I would argue it'd be the same, if not a little lower. They're going to go through so much scrutiny to do it. It would they would have to be lower, right?
Yeah, and considering that there's so much money on the line, they would want these athletes to compete, right? So let's say someone, yeah, I totally get your point. Like, let's say someone does test positive, they won't be able to compete in their that
event. Person gets yanked like immediately.
Yeah.
They'll probably do daily tests. They'll probably do all this other stuff. So, like, from that standpoint, I don't see it being like, look at the NBA. In all honesty, they have lower, percentage of cases than anywhere else in society, right? And it's because they're going through all these, daily tests, weekly
I think they
tests,
get
whatever it
tested
is.
twice a day or something on game days or something along that line. So
once on off days.
Something like
Something like
that.
that, right?
Yeah, definitely daily tests for sure.
And that's with players like James Harden going to strip clubs.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's like
So that's quite impressive, actually.
they're probably not going to have anything like that in Tokyo, right? Like, where are they going to go?
I'm sure they'll be under strict.
No,
Like
you're staying in the
they're
Live
staying
Village.
inside.
No
They're
strip
not
club policy.
Yeah,
exactly, and I'm sure the country of Japan doesn't want athletes wandering outside of the Olympic compound kind of thing, because I think that's the scariest thing for Japan hosting the Olympics. You're having all these athletes from all over the world come in,
And with
and
the variants,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. And so if something fucks up, it's like, holy shit, your country's screwed. And, that's like totally not fair to Japan in the sense, like, if the athletes aren't careful and taking the proper precautions. But yeah, I really like the points you both raised, Stefan, in the NJ, just talking about 4 years of your life, or possibly more,
More, yeah.
right?
It's not just 4
Your
years.
whole
Yeah,
life. And
yeah.
I don't know about you, like, I'm not very patriotic. I'm not like, oh, go Canada. But to represent Canada at the level of an Olympics would be really cool, right? Like, just like sports and representing your country, to me, that's like the one thing I'm kind of like patriotic about. That would be really cool to when you win, if you win the gold, you're hearing "Oh Canada" on the podium. Like, that's kind of surreal to me. So, what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and just in terms of qualifying, it's not a given, right? 4 years from now, are you gonna qualify again? Not necessarily, right? So this could be your one and only chance. So as an athlete, I'd probably, assuming there weren't some major health experts saying don't proceed with the Olympics, this is going to be disastrous for Japan, I would probably proceed and just be super careful. I'm sure everyone will be vaccinated at that point. Like, all the staff will be vaccinated, and they'll do their best to make the Olympics run smoothly. And I just think it's one of those things, like I said, with sports, it's one of these events they want it to go on to kind of just show that despite COVID, the world is kind of going back on. And this is kind of like that big symbolic event of, okay, well, the Olympics are going on, the lights at the end of the tunnel kind of thing.
It's really like the wrong kind of message to send, right? Especially when there's countries like India that's absolutely like people are falling like flies.
Yeah.
And like, you never know where this pandemic is gonna hit next, and where the big fire is gonna be that we need to put out, right? Like, this is a global thing, and just because in Japan it might not be as bad as somewhere else in the world, it could change in like a couple weeks or a month or two, right? And one other thing that I did want to say, there, in terms of like athletes preparing their whole lives trying to get into the Olympics, there are events like boxing, for example, where you cannot be a professional athlete, right? You're an amateur,
Yes.
and the only way to compete in the event is to be an amateur. And usually what people do is right after they complete their Olympic event or the Olympics, they go into professional, right? So people actually have like a lot at stake where they're not going professional, they're postponing it so they can do the Olympic thing and then go professional afterwards. So that's a big step for any athlete to be taking, where they turn down a lot of money just so they can go into the Olympics.
And just in terms of sports that don't have really seasons outside the Olympics, like obviously with basketball, tennis, soccer, I mean, these people are making money regardless of the Olympics or not. But think about the more niche sports; they need the spotlight to kind of like bring attention to their sport, and obviously, like you said, just make some money and or make, after the Olympics, make the transition to the professional side of the sport. Really good point. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. I had a lot of fun chatting with you, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Yep.